Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here on TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. We got a great show for you guys today. Welcome to the program. We're going to have some fun. We got some fun stories. We got some good stories, some actual good news. And we also have some disaster. So it's a mix today. Normally it's just disaster, but again, we do have some good news. And we're going to have some fun with Kellyanne Conway and Rick Santorum. So these are some fun segments. We'll actually start the show since they are, like I said, they're short segments. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have some short ones. We're going to have some long ones. So, buckle in. It's going to be a fun day. So, again, I mentioned that we're going to talk about Kellyanne Conway, what she did today, as well as Rick Santorum. Then we're going to go and get into some polling about the ACA. And then disastrous story, of course, about the minimum wage in Iowa. And what am I talking about Iowa? Well, it's important, and it's a trend. And we'll discuss that, of course, later on. Good news in North Carolina about the Republican power grab. So that's actually good news on that. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about marijuana legalization in New York in Andrew Cuomo and why it kind of matters on a national level when it comes to the Democratic Party, and maybe even the 2020 election. So we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but I think it's an important discussion to talk about since, marijuana legalization is still very much being discussed here in America. So that's fun. And then we've got news on Seattle. What did Seattle do to Wells Fargo? I'm going to get into that. Good times. Should be a great show. Thank you for, of course, coming and watching and staying here, hopefully, for the next hours we go around the nation for some of the best stories and progressive political commentary from around the web. Now, before I get in, again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And I want to especially thank the patrons, those who actually are able to come and support the show. Financially, by doing donations every month. You're awesome. You help me out a lot. You help the show continue to grow. And I love that, and I appreciate that, and I thank you so much for being able to donate. In fact, I do want to give out a couple of patron shout-outs before I start the show, really get into some of the stories. New patron, Danny Dennis. Thank you, Danny. And then one from yesterday, Mark Andre Furlan. Thank you so much, Mark, Danny. You two are awesome. Thank you for supporting independent progressive media. If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/TYTNation and make a one-time donation or even a monthly donation to help keep the show going. All right. Anyway. So let's move on. Let's have some fun. Kellyanne Conway. All right. The Trump advisor, Kellyanne Conway, may have just broken the law on live television. This is great. Now, on an appearance today on Fox and Friends, she was basically talking about how great Ivanka Trump is. She really likes Ivanka Trump. Okay, I don't have an issue with Ivanka, but she seems to really like Ivanka and had some problems with Nordstrom's. Now, Nordstrom's, of course, had recently dropped Ivanka's line. Now, Kellyanne Conway and Donald Trump both say, oh, it's political. You're dropping our line. No reason. There's no reason. Well, Nordstrom says it's because your shit's not selling. Nobody wants to buy your stuff. So, and we made this decision earlier. Nobody wants to buy your stuff, so we dropped it. We can make room for things that actually sell. Well, again, Donald Trump and Kellyanne Conway, they're not exactly buying that that explanation. Now, let's take a look at some of this video from Fox and Friends and see what she has to say about this. Let's take a look.
I do find it ironic that you've got some executives all over the internet bragging about what they've done to her and her line, and yet they're using the most woman in Donald Trump's most prominent.
Right.
She's his daughter, and they're using her, who's been a champion for women empowerment,
Sure.
women in the workplace, to get to him.
Just,
so I think people can see through that.
All right. So again, wait a minute there, Kellyanne. No, I think what you were talking about is alternative facts. As I just explained, Nordstrom dropped her line because the sales sucked. They were not doing very well. Now, look, I don't know if it's because it's overpriced or it's garbage or just overpriced garbage. Or, look, maybe, to be fair, even the Trump name has just been tainted, right, by Donald Trump's presidency. A lot of people who used to associate that brand with, quality and wealth are now looking at it like, racism and corruption. I'm not going to buy that. I don't know. Look, and as far as the quality, they could be perfectly lovely. They could be junk. I don't know. But for some reason, people are just no longer buying this stuff. Now, do you know what they call that? They call it capitalism. Now they're complaining about it. It's funny. Now, no. According to Kellyanne Conway, it can't be any of that. No, it's got to be these companies are getting back at Donald Trump. Again, no proof of that. Those are alternative facts. Now, look, notice I teased that how it might have been illegal for her to do this. Now, I want to show you another part of this video, and then we'll break it down. I'll show you why what she did is not exactly on the right side of the law. Let's take a look.
30
Go
seconds.
buy Ivanka's stuff is what I would tell you. I hate shopping. I'm gonna go get some on myself today. This is it's a wonderful line. I own some of it. I'm gonna give a free commercial here. Go buy it today, everybody. You can find it online.
All right, Kellyanne Conway.
Hey man, it's a wonderful line. It's a wonderful. Go buy it. Go buy it. I'm doing a free commercial for her. Go buy Ivanka. Great line. I even own some of it. You realize she was about 2 seconds away from giving out the website. Go here, buy her stuff. So again, look, you might be asking, yeah, okay, she likes Ivanka's stuff. What's wrong with that? Well, for that, I go to Larry Noble. Now, Larry Noble's general counsel for the Campaign Legal Center. That is a nonpartisan organization that was based in Washington, D.C. Now, he saw this segment, and he tweeted out, quote, "It appears Kellyanne Conway may have just violated a ban on federal employees using public office for endorsement of products." To that I say, oops. Or,
oops.
Now let me get into more detail about what that actually means. Now the statute that he cited is known as 5 CFR 2635702. And basically it addresses the use of public office for private gain. Now, there's a part of it, Part C, that states an employee shall not use or permit the use of his government official or title or any authority associated with his public office to endorse any product, service, or enterprise, except in certain circumstances. Now, again, I'm not quite sure what circumstances it is, but from the face of it, it looks kind of illegal. Now, you also have not just Larry Noble talking about it. You also have former Obama administration official, Chris Liu, that also shared a federal ethics law on Twitter that he believes Conway broke. Now, let me read that to you. Now, it's as follows. An employee shall not use his public office for his own private gain, for the endorsement of any product, service, or enterprise, or for the private gain of friends or relatives. Now, the law applies to employees of an agency which is defined as an executive department, a government corporation, and an independent establishment. Now look, Ivanka Trump, she still has a business interest in her clothing lines. Donald Trump also has a conflict of interest in this whole thing. Now the Independent explains, most modern presidents have sold their financial holdings and put the cash raised in a blind trust whose investments remained unknown to them. Donald Trump has not done that. He has not distanced himself from his empire. Instead, what he did is that he gave managerial control of his company to his two sons, and still seems actively engaged in helping out his business. In fact, that recent tweet about Nordstrom itself, how, they're hurting Ivanka. that seems to be an indication of a conflict of interest. When the president himself is tweeting things out and saying, Nordstrom being so unfair, don't shop there. When Ivanka Trump, who's part of the Trump empire, tends to be competing against Nordstrom, that's a bit of an issue. In fact, Kathleen Clark, a government ethics expert, said that the Nordstrom tweet is problematic because other retailers might think twice about now dropping the Ivanka Trump brand for fear of getting criticized publicly by the president. She said it was especially disturbing that Trump retweeted his message on the official White House account. Now, what's funny, a little ironic about this, is that it kind of did the opposite of hurting the brand and of making people think, oh, maybe I shouldn't drop Ivanka Trump's line. Stocks in Nordstrom have actually went up by 5%. Funny. But still, the whole point remains is that you should not be doing this. And look, again, you add in that tweet with Conway's Buy Ivanka commercial. And look, you watch that whole thing for context. All she's doing is saying how awesome Ivanka Trump is. How wonderful she is, how hard of a businesswoman, how hardworking she is, how great of a business person she is, how much work she put into this, and all that stuff. Basically talking her up for almost the entire interview, while tearing down some business leaders think are having fun with this whole thing. But I think Ivanka's great. In fact, you should buy her products. This was a commercial. It absolutely was a commercial. All that should make it pretty clear that this administration intends to use its power not to benefit you, but to benefit themselves and their private businesses. And Kellyanne Conway is just another example of that. They're not even hiding it anymore. This corruption, it's out in the open. It's right in your face. They're laughing at you. They're putting it it's right in front of you. If you think the Trump administration is actually here to work for you, you are not paying attention. Or you're willfully ignorant. All right. Insane. All right. So let's go to the next one. Let's have some fun with the Rick Santorum. It's been a while since we did a Santorum story. All right. Now, during a meeting with sheriffs on Tuesday, Trump had claimed that the murder rate in our country is the highest it's been in 47 years. Now, a lot of people picked up on this and was like, wait a minute. Is that true? The highest in 47 years? Well, we might want to double check that, maybe do some fact checks. Now, of course, when you actually check out the real numbers, you would find out that no, crime is actually not at the highest level it's been in 47 years. In fact, it's actually it's at a low. Now, Rick Santorum is going to go on CNN, and he's going to talk about that with Poppy Harlow, and she does a good job and challenging him on this. And basically what he's going to do is he's going to talk about this and offer up a very interesting defense of Donald Trump. Now, first, we've got one clip. Let's take a look at that first.
As you know, the president said that the murder rate is the highest that it has been in more than 4 decades. Let's pull up the chart and show everyone what we're talking about here. The U.S. murder rate is actually half of where it was 4 decades ago. What do you want to hear, Senator, from the president on this?
Well, the president has campaigned on the fact that he was going to bring law and order back to the country. And you're right, the overall rate of murders has gone down. A lot of that is, frankly, demographic. The country's getting older, and part of that is, as I mentioned, demographic. But no, part of it is the fact that people like Rudy Giuliani and others, put in programs of policing that were much more aggressive in community policing, and it's had a positive impact on crime. But you can't ignore the horrible violence that we're seeing in many of our major cities.
Whoa. Hold on there, buddy. So basically, Rick Santorum says, yeah, okay, I admit crime has gone down. Yeah, sure. But you know what? It's because of Rudy Giuliani and how people are old. There's more old people. Old people obviously don't do crime. So, look, that's kind of ridiculous, right? Now, look, we actually did have a huge surge in this country surge of violence in this country in the 1970s, 1980s. You know why? Well, one of the big reasons is lead. Lead in the water, lead in the air, lead in the gasoline. Now, look, you might be like, lead? What the fuck are you talking about, lead? Stay with me here. It's a little bit of science, right? Now, it was found back in the 1970s, 1980s, that it was found by scientist Claire Patterson that lead tends to make people violent. Now, he found that there's this lead everywhere. And he's like, oh my God, there's lead in the gasoline. It makes people violent. Lead in the water. People are breathing this stuff in. Crime rates have gone up. Holy crap. Maybe we need to go and regulate this stuff. And so that's what he did. He fought against the oil companies in order to take lead out of gasoline. Fought the companies to get more environmental regulations to make sure lead doesn't end up in our water, like what's happening now in Flint. So he actually did a lot of good work. And since then, we've started to see violence go down. Less violence, less murders. Overall in America, there seems to be less crime, and we're actually safer than we have been. Now, there are exceptions, of course. And, of course, every right-winger wants to bring up, oh, yeah, what about Chicago? What about Chicago? Okay, well, look, Chicago is a little bit of an island, okay? And in reality, yes, there is more violence there because it's a bit of an anomaly. Now, on Chicago, they actually still have a lower murder rate than back in the 1970s and 80s. So even then, there, crime and murders have gone down. It's just higher there than it is in Chicago than it is in the rest of the country. So, and even in 2016, after, years of it going down, it did tick back up, and there's a problem there. But even Rick Santorum has to admit, look, even with Chicago, man, murders still down. Even if he's wrong on the case of the decline, it's not the kind of aggressive policing. All that's done is really put more people in jail. Well, that's not the solution. No, the solution is more community policing. And to be fair, he did mention community policing, but it's also that massive reduction in lead. Now, I want to go back and go to the next clip where he actually does defend Donald Trump in this very new and very interesting way. Take a look.
Doesn't it do a disservice to the American people and actually the argument about how do you bring crime down in cities like Chicago to say something that is just absolutely not true, to say that the murder rate in this country, this is a quote, is the highest it has been in 47 years?
Yeah.
It is not. It is half of that.
I'm not going to defend Donald Trump's recitation of the facts on a lot of things. I think Trump speaks more from emotional and how he's feeling about certain things than he does necessarily being bound by all the facts. And
is that
we've had that discussion. I do believe that's one of his characteristics. It's not a strong one. It's not one that helps him in the debate. But I think his point that we're seeing a lot of violence and we're seeing cities out of control, and you look at a city like Chicago and you see violence, markedly up and murder rates up. I think that's what he's referring to.
Okay, so I love this. He's an emotional speaker. He just cares too much that, he cares too much about what's going on to actually know what's really going on. He cares too much to be bound by facts. I mean, facts, really. Who cares about facts? I love this. Absolutely love this because it's ridiculous. So basically what he's saying is that our president he's so emotional that we should just give him the pass when he lies. Oh, but wait a minute. He's president. He doesn't get a pass. You can't just legislate on emotion. And by far, this is the biggest irony of this entire story. Because look, one of the claims that right-wingers always make about liberals is, you are too emotional. You're not actually looking at real facts. No, you're way too emotional and you got to calm down. And if you calm down, you'll see it our way. We're actually right. Biggest irony, right? The president right now is doing just that. Basing things on, according to Rick Santorum at least, basing things on emotion and not actual facts. And it's amazing to see Rick Santorum actually using that line to defend him for lying about the murder rates. When the facts are readily available, we have truly entered the twilight zone. So, and again, we have a super emotional snowflake president who has to be kept away from information that might upset him. You know what we also call that? We call that a safe space. Super snowflake, thin-skinned president who's so emotional that you've got to keep him separated. And the irony about this is that the same people who always complain about the snowflake liberals in safe spaces, they absolutely love Donald Trump. The irony, man, it fucking burns. Oh, okay. So now let's go to a poll. Let's talk about the ACA. After I adjust my chair. All right. Now, just how much does the average American know about Obamacare versus the Affordable Care Act? Or more accurately, how many people know that those two programs are exactly the same thing? Obamacare is the ACA, ACA is the Obamacare. Well, in order to find out the answer to that, pollsters over at Morning Consult conducted a survey, and the results, of course, are still incredibly disheartening. Now, the poll found that a sizable minority of Americans don't understand that Obamacare is just another name for the Affordable Care Act. Oh, how sad. So let me break down the numbers. Now, in the survey, 35% of respondents said they either thought Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act were different policies. 17% or didn't know that they were the same or different, 18%. So it's broke down between two different things. Either they think it's the same or they're not sure. I don't know. Maybe it could be the same. I don't know. Nobody's telling me anything. Like, I'm hearing stuff from all sorts of different sides. I don't know what to go. It's crazy. Now, this is where it gets kind of sad. The confusion was more pronounced among young people 18 to 29 and those who earn less than $50,000 a year. So that, incredibly disheartening. So you've got some younger people and people on the lower economic, the lower part of the economic spectrum that don't know. Oh, that's sad. Now, of course, these two groups, and this is the really sad thing about this, both groups would be most affected by the repeal of the ACA because they would be helped the most. Now, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, most Republicans, a higher percentage, 72%, said that they knew Obamacare and the ACA were the same, and of course, they still despise it. Okay. Now, again, I think that's because the sizable majority of people in the Republican Party hate the mandate. Now, or they fall into the coverage gap because they might have higher incomes. Now, of course, when you're in the coverage gap, you can't really get the subsidies. But also, you might be in there in that gap and you can't afford the plans or the giant deductibles for those plans, basically making your insurance obsolete. Now, of course, that coverage gap is the fatal flaw of the ACA, and I pointed out that a lot of times. Nobody wants to pay or get fined for something that they can't use and where the price will continue to rise to more than what they can afford. But now the thing about the ACA is that even without the ACA, you have prices rising. In fact, you have prices rising faster without the ACA. But still, it understandably frustrates people. And again, that's why I'm for changing the system, for actually improving the ACA by adding a public option and eventually going to a completely single-payer system, not repealing it. Now, that actually goes to the next part of the poll, repeal. Now, when respondents were asked what would happen if Obamacare was repealed, a lot of people didn't really understand the consequences of it. And many didn't even know that the ACA would end up being repealed. Very interesting. Again, they thought, Obamacare, ACA, I don't know what's the difference. I don't know what's getting repealed because I don't know what these laws are. I'm still confused. I'm not sure which one is which. Sad. Now, 45% of people did not know that the ACA would be repealed. 45%. 12% of Americans said the ACA would not be repealed. So, like, oh yeah, they're going to get rid of that Obamacare, but I'll have ACA. That's 12% of people. 32% of people said they didn't know. I don't know if the ACA is getting repealed. If they repeal Obamacare, I don't know. Oh, that's crazy. And a little disastrous. And it shows how little the American people have actually been informed about what Obamacare and the ACA actually are. And of course, that happens to be a victory for the Republican Party because the Republicans, they despise the law. Not because it's bad, it's their own law. They came up with it. But it's because it goes back down to politics. I mean, look, they came up with it. It was Heritage Care, Romney Care in Massachusetts. Is actually pretty successful there. Obama looked at it and went, I'm just going to take it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to use it. Instead of actually going with a progressive plan or doing Obamacare and actually having a public option put into it. No, we're going to take the right-wing plan and we're going to apply it here. Congratulations. And of course, when you did that, the Republicans didn't have anything to fall back on because they didn't have anything to offer. Ooh, health savings accounts. Fantastic. Even though when it's been tried, it's been an absolute disaster. Now, again, the irony about this whole thing is that there are positions in this or provisions that are actually very popular with large majorities of the American people. For example, the ban on not covering pre-existing conditions. Or you also have being able to stay on your parents' insurance until you're 26. Those are popular, and those were actually the brainchild of Republicans. They came up with the idea. And of course, since they came up with the law itself, including the individual mandate, which is the thing that makes the whole goddamn thing work, well, they know the weaknesses, and they knew how to play politics against it. And what they did, one of the first things they did was attach Obama's name to it. It's Obamacare, not the Affordable Care. It's Obamacare. And they made it sound like it was a government takeover of healthcare, which isn't even closely true. It's patently false. And it turns out that there was so much rancor and animus against President Obama that anything attached to his name or with his name attached to it, instantly hated. But of course, people hate the Obama part more than they actually hate the Affordable Care Act, which is the same damn thing. I mean, you had people down in Kentucky that loved their health insurance exchanges. They loved Connect. That's what it was called. It wasn't called Obamacare. In fact, they went down and they asked people, what do you think about your health insurance plan? Oh, I love it, man. I can actually afford it now. I get help with, being able to afford it. It's great. What do you think about Obamacare? Hate it. Terrible socialism. Got to get rid of it. Without even knowing that it's the same thing. Again, sad. And Republicans, again, they took this idea and they said, we're going to play politics here and we're going to distance ourselves. Nope, not our idea. That's Obama's idea. You know what our idea is? Read them. Read them. And all this served to just confuse the fuck out of people. So I don't really blame a lot of people for being low information because there's a lot of confusing information out there. And that's why people think, well, if they get rid of Obamacare, that's fine. I'll still have the ACA, or I might even have my Medicaid expansion through the ACA, so screw Obamacare. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Which leads me to another piece of this poll. According to the survey, only 61% of adults knew that many people would lose coverage through Medicaid or subsidies for private health insurance if the ACA were repealed and no replacement plan enacted. That 61% of people actually knew what would happen. The rest, about 1 in 6 Americans actually, said that coverage through Medicaid and subsidies that help people would not be affected by the ACA repeal. And 23% did not know. So when you combine the we don't knows and the no, Medicaid, that's going to be fine, the subsidies are going to be fine if you get rid of the ACA or Obamacare, you end up with 39%. Oof. Disastrous number. That's over a third of people, of the people polled. Insane. And this illustrates the power of propaganda. I'm betting a big chunk of these people either watched Fox News and got confused, or they didn't pay attention to news at all. Which actually, you might be better off if you don't pay attention to news, because at least you might be uninformed, but you're not being misinformed. And of course, I also have to throw some shade at the Democrats for really not doing a good job at selling this. And look, you know, you got to sell this to the people, not to the Republican politicians, is what they tried to do. No, it's your plan. It'll work great. What? My plan? No, it's not my plan. It's your plan. I didn't have anything to do with this. In fact, I'm going to run against it. No, Democrats had to go and sell it directly to the people, and they actually did a terrible, terrible job. And I also think the lack of a public option, which would have made it which would have actually been incredibly popular had they left it in the law, also ended up hurting it. But again, the Democrats, no, we got to get Republican votes. We got to make this bipartisan by dropping the public option. Well, what happened? What happened? Tell me how that went, Democrats. Tell me how that went. Other than massive losses on the board, you got nothing. No Republican votes, no Republican support. In fact, they used their own law, the one that they knew the weaknesses about, against you and against other Democrats. And we had the losses in 2010, losses in 2014, and the massive losses in 2016. I'm not saying that's all Obamacare or the ACA. I'm saying that it just shows one of the absolute failures of the Democratic Party for getting out messaging and actually helping regular people in the working class. And instead, they went after Republicans. Hillary Clinton tried to get the so-called moderate Republicans. Well, Republicans are authoritarians. They love sucking up to the alpha male. And that's exactly what they did. They all fell in line. And Donald Trump is the alpha male. They all lined up to give him their banana. That's what happened. So no, why would you go for a Republican light in Hillary Clinton when you could go for a full Republican like Donald Trump? Makes no sense. But again, all those factors contribute to what we see today in these polls. The media, the Democratic failure, as well as people being misinformed by places like Fox News. And this is what we have. And this is why we're here today. Sad. I can't get through those segments without saying how sad it is. It's just it's a disaster. It's a tremendous disaster. Okay. Let's talk minimum wage. Now, Republican lawmakers in Iowa are pushing a bill that would freeze the minimum wage to the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Now, what it would also do is it would strip local counties and cities of the ability to set their own minimum wages. Now, this is another one of the preempt laws, as they're called. Now, basically, they're passed statewide in order to prevent cities and local counties from passing minimum wage increases in their jurisdictions, as well as doing other things. Now, what is this based off of? Well, back in October of 2016, the Polk County Board of Supervisors had voted 4-0 to increase the minimum wage. After several rounds of increases, it would reach $10.75 by 2019, with further increases adjusted for inflation. Hey, that sounds great. People in Polk County, you got a raise. That's awesome. That helps the economy. But wait, it turns out, nope. You might not be getting it after all. Now, county officials had said that they did this because, look, most people want to raise the minimum wage. It's popular among Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. So we all want to raise the wage. We think $7.25 is a poverty wage, to borrow a phrase from Bernie Sanders. So let's raise it. Let's tie it to inflation so we make sure people who are working for a living don't have to still live in poverty. Now, of course, these cities, since the Republicans in office are bought by giant corporations, mainly the fast food industry, well, they said, no, we're not going to do anything about it. And now, since you're trying to do something about it, we're going to stop you. Now, this is the new bill is called House Study Bill 92. And what it would do is that it would immediately roll back the minimum wage increases approved in Polk, Johnson, Wapello, and Lynn counties in Iowa. Now, the bill, other than just saying you can't do this, you can't raise the minimum wage for your workers, it also restricts the power of local governments to set their own labor regulations, create civil rights protections for example, LGBT folks, and institutes bans on the use of plastic bags. So you can't ban plastic bags. It says, nope, you don't have the power to do that in your local municipality. Sorry, can't ban the plastic bags. Isn't that crazy? That's kind of an insane thing to do, to legislate. By the way, can't do a plastic bag ban. What if our citizens want to do a plastic bag ban? Can't do it. Can't do it. Not allowed. Give me a second here. Gotta itch my nose. It's embarrassing. I got new nose pads on my glasses, so just a little itchy. All right. So now, one of the representatives that introduced this bill is named Jake Heifel, who's a Republican. Now, he says he rejects the idea that his bill takes away power from counties and cities, arguing that, hey, they never had this power to begin with. His bill, he says, merely formalizes what state law always intended. Local governments have no authority to legislate on labor issues such as the minimum wage. Well, that's crazy. That's actually taking away local control of your city. And there are a lot of cities across the United States who actually do have this power to change their city minimum wage. Seattle did it. Seattle raised their wage to $15 an hour. You don't see Washington going saying, nope, can't do that. At least not yet. Now, basically what it means is that, look, we like local control, unless you try to do things we don't like. You try to ban the plastic bags, can't do it. Try to raise the minimum wage, can't do it. But we like small government. Remember, Jake Heifel is a Republican. It's hypocrisy. Look, this is state government essentially stealing control and power from the local government. It's ironically the same thing that the Republicans always complain that the federal government's doing. Well, what about states' rights? Well, what about cities' rights? What about the government that is the most local, that is the closest to you, happens to be the best? What about that? No, all those principles out the window. Gone. Just because you want to raise the minimum wage. I mean, again, what's wrong with the city passing a higher minimum wage? If that's what they want to do, if most people are in favor of it, we should have democracy. Oh, right. Because if they do that in a city and people realize, holy shit, this actually works, well, they might want to pass it in their areas. And then, of course, the businesses who do business there, well, they don't like that because they actually might have to make a little less in profit. And, of course, when businesses make less profit, they can't afford to buy politicians as much, which right now they can. And so, again, that's why they're doing this. Now, to be fair, there are Republicans in Iowa that are kind of pissed off at this bill. Now, for one of them is Cedar Rapids Mayor Ron Corbett. Now, he said, quote, "It may be a Republican bill, but it is not a conservative bill. Conservatives believe in local control, and local government is the closest government to the people. Iowa communities are not monoliths," Corbett said. "Cedar Rapids has a different need than Sioux City, and each community should be allowed to govern locally." Now, he also said, quote, "We just had this anti-Washington wave spreading across the country of people rejecting top-down government. That wave didn't mean we now want Des Moines to tell everyone what needs to be done." So, look, I don't agree with the guy on a lot of points. He is a very conservative person, but you got to give him points for at least being consistently a consistent, principled conservative. I said I don't like big government. I don't like big government in Washington, and I sure as fuck don't like big government in Des Moines. Get out of our city. Get out of our lives. Hey, I don't agree with you on a lot of issues, but there you go. Principled conservative. I can at least respect that. And on this one, I actually agree. If he wants to pass minimum wage increase in his city, You shouldn't have the state government coming in and saying, nope, 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 can't do that, because that's bullshit. Now, again, I alluded to earlier corporate influence, right? Politicians getting bought by giant companies that don't want to see people get a higher minimum wage. Well, you have lobbyists here that lobby on this bill for the Iowa Association of Business Industry and the Iowa Restaurant Association. Now, they, of course, support the bill, saying that that all the cities and municipalities, local areas, cannot do these labor protections or raise their minimum wage. And they say it's because, quote, we like a uniform wage across the state. Uniform wage. Now, I don't think so much they like it because it's uniform, but because it's uniformly low. I mean, look, if they pass this bill, and some have even floated, hey, let's do an amendment where we, jack the rate, that we raise the wage up to $8.25 an hour to try to get it through, to try to appease the Democrats. Well, that's still going to hurt workers in the places where they've actually raised it higher. There's a city, I forget which one, I believe it was Polk County actually, that raised their intends to raise their wage to $10.25. So no, we're gonna just give you one state minimum wage, $8.25. So you people who had $10, no, you're gonna lose a couple of dollars. But we like it uniform. No, it's a way to make it low all across the state in places where it's actually higher. So you're going to end up hurting people. So the corporations, they still win. Local jurisdictions, they lose. And look, we've seen this all over Ohio, Idaho. In fact, 16 other states have also passed similar legislation. And actually, this legislation, these preempt laws, well, they're coming from somewhere. They're ALEC bills, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Basically, they go and they create model bills that are anti-worker, that are anti-union, anti-environment, and they just hand them out to different lawmakers who copy them pretty much word for word, put their name on it, and then try to send it through. And that's what's going on here. Now, there's some good news, at least right now. The bill hasn't gone through yet. However, it is a Republican legislature, and the governor, Terry Branstad, has yet to comment on whether or not he'll sign it into law. So, I don't know. Iowa might end up becoming the 19th state to essentially usurp democracy and local control from the people in favor of a top-down, big government approach. And an approach that is dictated by people who don't want you to have a higher minimum wage. Now, if I were you guys that were sitting in Iowa, if I have any Iowa viewers right now, flood the state house with cause, man. Call them, make their phone ring off the hook. Do protests, do demonstrations, peaceful protests, of course. Let the politicians know that you were watching them. They're on notice. If they try to usurp democracy, let them know that you are not going to abide by that you are not going to stand by and watch them transfer local control from your city that wants you to have that voted to have you have a higher minimum wage to Des Moines that wants to make you have a lower minimum wage. You protest, you demonstrate, you call them. Maybe that might be enough to change their mind. That might be enough to get out that message. And maybe you might actually win. Protest works. Okay. All right. A couple more stories here. Good news. Let's go to some good news. It's been a while since we had that. In fact, actually, I want to take a quick 1-minute break here, and we'll be back. More show. So stay right here. All right, back and around the nation here. All right, let's get to some good news. A Republican power grab in North Carolina has been stopped. Now, a panel of judges in a brief ruling issued on Wednesday put a hold on a law that would have required Governor Roy Cooper's nominees to head state cabinet agencies to undergo confirmation hearings before the state legislature. So basically what's going on is that back in December, North Carolina's Republican legislature had passed several measures to effectively strip the incoming governor, a Democrat, Roy Cooper, of power after he was able to successfully oust Governor Pat McCrory, who was a Republican. Now, according to CNN, Senate Bill 4 had removed state county election board from Democratic control, slowed legal battles path to the state Supreme Court, where a majority of justices were appointed by Democrats, and made the Supreme Court elections partisan rather than nonpartisan. That's just one of them. Another bill, House Bill 17, blocked Cooper from appointing any members to the State Board of Education and to the Board of Trustees for the University of North Carolina system. Now, all in all, these bills would have reduced the number of appointments up to the Cooper administration from 1,500 down to 300. So, massive power grab by the Republicans in limiting Governor Roy Cooper's power. Now, after these bills were passed, of course, Cooper, he's like, oh, you're going to limit my power? Oh, I'm going to sue you. They sued, claiming that it was unconstitutional under the state legislature, state constitution. And, hey, it turns out we had a victory. He actually won. Now, this decision, as well as the state election board measure that he ruled against back in December, the panel of judges basically agreed. Yes, this is against the state constitution. You can't just sit there and strip rights away from the governor. You can't do that. That is unconstitutional. They have these special constitutional powers for the state. You can't just take that away. So, great. Now, upon learning, of course, his victory, Cooper said in a statement, quote, "We need to put these partisan confirmation games behind us and get on with repealing HB 2, which is incredibly unpopular. That's the bathroom bill. Raising teacher pay and getting better jobs for North Carolinians. The court is absolutely correct in the decision and should not be intimidated by threats from legislative leaders." Now, what am I talking about? Threats. Well, we'll get to the Republican statement after this. But basically, we can all kind of recognize that this was nothing more than a petty plan to limit the power of an incoming administration because they were the member of an opposite political party. So that's what we have. And this is called being a spiteful loser. You lost. You don't just get to say, okay, we're going to burn the place before we go. That's essentially what they were doing. And thankfully, the courts ruled on the side of, you can't actually do that. We're going to put your fires out because you cannot limit the power of an incoming governor just because you don't like him. That's not how this whole thing works. Now, it, of course, seems pretty clear. Nonetheless, Republicans are pissed that their little coup failed. Republicans in Raleigh said the judges have overstepped their authority. State Senate President Phil Berger and House Speaker Tim Moore, both Republicans, said the decision violated the separation of powers over a duly passed law. Now, that's actually incorrect. As I keep mentioning, the state constitution gives those powers to the governor to appoint people. You tried taking it away. If anybody was overstepping their bounds, it's you guys. But he continues, this unprecedented move would be like the legislature telling a judge what jurors to pick to decide in a case. Berger and Moore said in a joint statement, judges are not legislators. If these three men want to make laws, they should hang up their robes and run for a legislative seat. Well, I bet they'd love that. But seriously, no. Again, they're using the word unprecedented without knowing what it actually means. What's unprecedented was this enormous power grab, a blatant attempt at disempowering an incoming governor because, again, they're a member of the opposite political party. This is what Republicans do. They don't want to give up their power. And when they're forced to, when they lose an election, nope, can't do that. We're going to try and limit your power. We're going to try and grind you to a halt because we don't want progress at any cost. They don't want to get rid of HB2, which, by the way, has cost the state of North Carolina millions of dollars in business. They want to keep that ridiculous law about bathrooms. Bathrooms. You want to talk about overstepping your bounds? You're trying to legislate where people pee. That's ridiculous. That's big government stepping in and trying to regulate things that it shouldn't regulate. Again, overstepping your bounds. You want to talk about overstepping your bounds? That's exactly a good example of that. Now, these Republicans, it's just nothing more than ridiculous Republican hypocrisy. And I'm glad that these judges finally put it to rest. Let's have some progress in North Carolina. All right. I don't know if I have time for the pot story. You know what? I'm going to save that for tomorrow. I'm going to save the pot story for tomorrow because it's a pretty long one. So let's go to our final piece of good news. And it has sort of related to Dapple, which has been actually a lot of bad news in Dapple. But this might be a positive thing. So now, two cities have found a way to fight Dapple by pulling investments out of a bank that just happens to be helping to fund the pipeline project. Now, NPR is reporting that Seattle City Council has voted to not renew its contract with Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, obviously a giant bank that we've talked about before. Wells Fargo, of course, has its role of lending money to Energy Transfer Partners, to people who are building the Dakota Access Pipeline. Now, as a result of this move, the city says that it will not be renewing its contract with the bank that expires next year. NPR reports that the unanimous vote will pull more than $3 billion in city funds from the banking giant. The council says Seattle says the bidding process for its next banking partner will, quote, incentivize social responsibility. I love it. So not only are they hitting this company in the pocketbook, Wells Fargo, and of course hitting Energy Transfer Partners in the pocketbook as well, you have them looking at banks that are more socially responsible. Awesome. Now, of course, Seattle is not the only city. I mentioned there's another one. You have the city council in Davis, California, that decided to take similar action over the pipeline. It voted unanimously to find a new bank to handle its roughly $124 million in accounts by the end of 2017. Now, look, $3,124 million. Okay, $3 billion, that's a big number. But Wells Fargo is it's a huge bank, so it handles billions of dollars. So I don't know how much this will hurt, but it's more of a symbolic gesture. Still, it's sort of good news. Now, on the same day the two cities moved to cut ties with Wells Fargo, the Army Corps of Engineers unfortunately granted an easement allowing the Dakota Access Pipeline to cross under the Missouri River north of Standing Rock. Protesters, obviously not happy. They're still out there. They're still fighting. In fact, they never left. They never stopped protecting the water. And hopefully they will not be able to stop protecting the water. Hopefully they're still going to be there. And hopefully we can still stop this pipeline. Maybe from a mix of divestments like this or protest and popular action. We don't know. I hope. Now, it's not just about Wells Fargo's investment into Dapple that made these two cities break ties with them. There's also some other stuff. Maybe the fact that it's kind of a shitty bank that rips people off. I mean, look, they were recently fined, and I did this story when it came out. They were fined millions of dollars for being found making low-level employees create fake accounts in customers' name in order to boost their business. They had such a toxic competitive atmosphere at that bank where you were incentivized through their profit structure, their bonus structure, to go and defraud customers. Well, they got found out, and they got fined massively. Now, Seattle's plan to stop its dealings with Wells Fargo again, comes months after the city canceled an $100 million bond deal between its electric utility and the bank. Now, that took place last fall, of course, when the treasurers of California, Illinois, and other entities said that they would freeze their dealings with Wells Fargo, in some cases, for at least a year. Now, Wells Fargo gets worse. Not only they invested in Dapple, and not only did they get caught defrauding their customers, they also are invested heavily in the private prison industry. Look, if you haven't already, divest. Get your money out of Wells Fargo. Look, if you care about the environment or prison reform, or if you just don't want to, if you just want to bank someplace that won't create a fake account in your name, divest. Kick them where it hurts. Right up in the wallet. And maybe then, if enough people pull out and enough cities pull out, they might stop funding Dapple. And who knows? If you cause enough economic hurt to Energy Transfer Partners, to the banks that support this company, they might actually not be able to go through and go forward with finishing the rest of the Dakota Access Pipeline. I hope. It's got to be a mixture of divestments, economic hurt, and protest. We still might actually be able to shut down Dapple. So I think that this is a good story. I think this is good news. And I think this is the kind of civic action that we can all take. Even if you can't be at Standing Rock, you can at least pull your money out of places that support this pipeline. And maybe we'll be able to shut it down. All right. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got time for today. Thank you for going around the nation with me for the last hour. Love you guys. I appreciate it. You want to support the show? Patreon.com/TYTNation. Make sure to like this video, share, subscribe. We've got we'll have videos up later on today, so you can go and share those. If you missed the story, if you came in late, we'll have all the stuff that we covered up on YouTube. So, again, you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, as well. But anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. Again, love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.